Hello and welcome. Today we are going to experiment with a Saturday segment. I've already mentioned this before in the previous video. I think Monday actually is when I mentioned it, but it's kind of um, not planned out today, so we're just going to kind of go live, you know. Um, do everything as we look for the information. So, with that said, let's open up Chrome and we'll look the first thing, the world of sports. I'm so exhausted right now. As far as the NFL, it's not football season. It is only April, so football don't. Uh, the professional football season doesn't start until um, around August. Yeah. So we don't really need to worry too much, although we are coming upon the NFL draft, which does take place in April. If I can type. Okay, so it is at the end of the month, the 25th through the 27th of this year, of April this year. So we're still about a couple weeks off. Let's look at. I think it's also past NHL season. No, they're playing. So they are in the playoffs. Actually, it looks like. Yep, they've already played the 82 game season. So, with that said, let's take a look at the playoffs for the NHL. Let's see. So, today is the 13th. of April. If I can get my computer to work with me. Bracket. That'll be an easier way to look at it. And like I said, we're kind of having to do this live and off the cuff, so I apologize where I hadn't had it planned out. Like I've already said, I've kind of been all over the place here lately, so it looks like we are indeed in the first round. We have the Calgary Flames versus the Colorado Avalanche. San Jose Sharks versus, I'm not sure who that team is. My apologies.
To be concerned if you're Tampa heading back to Columbus after 2 games. I mean, not only did you choke away a terrible loss in game 1.
I didn't want to hear that because I'm trying to review the actual bracket, people. Kills me. But anyway, as I was saying, the Flames versus the Avalanche, the Sharks versus, I'm not sure who that team is. It's been a while since I've really kept up with hockey, so I apologize. The Dallas Stars versus, again, I'm not sure who that team is. Nashville Predators or Florida Panthers. I want to say the Predators. And finally, we have the St. Louis Blues versus the team. I know I'm not making a lot of sense, so I apologize. Like I said, once again, I didn't have time to really set this up beforehand as I'd intended. I've been kind of all over the place, but that's one half, and the other side consists of the Tampa Bay Lightning versus, I'm not sure who that is. Probably they've got the Ohio flag. Columbus, maybe? But Tampa Bay versus somebody. The second one is pretty easy. I recognize those. Boston Bruins versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. So at least I know that. Next is the Washington Capitals versus the Carolina Hurricanes. And finally, the New York Islanders versus the Pittsburgh Penguins. So they are in the beginnings of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's see what else is going on. I believe NBA are they still playing 60 and 22? Or did that recently end? Hmm. So it looks like they're in the off season. Unless I'm mistaken. I'm wanting to say it is the playoffs, but yeah, it is the playoffs for the NBA as well. So let's take a look at that playoff bracket. Like I said, I haven't kept up heavily with sports as I used to. I used to be pretty big on um, most things that dealt with sports. I used to be able to name you top rushers, top passers, defensive stars, setups, everything for like NFL, and yeah, I was on top of the game, but it's been a few years for me. So I apologize if I'm off a bit here. Okay. So yeah, NBA is just starting their playoffs. Just starting their playoff run. In the West, we have Golden State Warriors versus the Los Angeles Clippers. The Houston Rockets versus the Utah Jazz. The Portland Trailblazers versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the Denver Nuggets versus the San Antonio Spurs. That's in the West. In the East, we have the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Detroit Pistons. The Boston Celtics versus the Indiana Pacers. I am a bit of a Celtics fan, so that that's good for me. It's something to keep up with. The Philadelphia 76ers versus the Brooklyn Nets. And the Toronto Raptors versus the Orlando Magic. I think that's the first time Orlando's really been in the playoffs since it was Shaq and Anthony Hardaway, so my goodness. But that's what's going on in the NBA. And if I'm correct, the baseball season has just started because it is in the spring. Let's take a look at the standings. Oh my goodness, my Rays are crushing it. 11-3, and they're stomping everybody else in the division. Still early, but yes. AL East, it's the Rays at 11-3, then the Yankees, Orioles, Red Sox, and Blue Jays. But like I said, it's so early in the season, these records are almost meaningless at this point because it's 14 games out of 162. In the AL Central, Tigers are 8-5. Indians are 8-5, so they're tied for the lead. with behind them the Twins, the White Sox, and the Royals. And in the AL West, the Mariners are 13-3, with behind them the Astros, the Athletics, the Angels, and the Rangers. But in the AL, the best records belong to the Rays and the Mariners. That's pretty cool. Let's take a look at the National League. We have in the NL East the Mets, and behind them are the Phillies, the Braves, the Nationals, and the Marlins. In the NL Central at 9-5, the Brewers lead, followed by the Cardinals, the Pirates, the Cubs, and the Reds. And in the NL West at 10-5, the Padres lead, followed by the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, the Giants, and the Rockies. And that means the Padres are leading with the best record in the NL, so not too bad. Let's see. College football isn't up yet. Hasn't begun yet. College basketball ended recently with UVA winning, which I'm from Virginia, so go Hoos. Let's look at soccer. Yeah, the UVA won the college basketball championship. They was a number one seed last year, but lost in the first round, embarrassingly. And this year they said, no, we ain't having that. So they won it all. It's a nice little comeback story. Let's see. I don't know too much about actual soccer, or as it's known to the rest of the world, their version of football. I just have no clue what's really happening. Um, so I'll try not to even get into it since I don't really understand. So with that said, that's kind of the world's the local sports. So let's go talk a bit about history. Do, 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 do. This day in history. There we go. Let's take a look. Today is the 13th. But let's go back here. Starting on the 6th. April the 6th. April 6, 1970, the U.S. officially enters World War I. It would end the next year, but what else? The first modern Olympics are held in Athens, Greece, April 6th in 1896. President John Tyler inaugurated as the 10th President of the United States on April 6th in 1841. See, April 6th, 1862, the Battle of Shiloh, the Civil War battle in the U.S. begins. General Ulysses S. Grant and against Confederate General Albert Sidney Johnston. Okay. Yeah. April 7th. Let's see what happened that date. April 7th, 1994, violence erupts in Rwanda, foreshadowing the genocide of 800,000 Rwandans. I remember that. I was a teenager when that happened. And of course, later they've made a interesting movie of it, Hotel Rwanda, starring Don Cheadle. It's a great movie. If you've never watched it, check it out. Let's see. Let's see what else happens. I don't see too much else. Like I said, the Battle of Shiloh, it actually concluded. So it began the day before, but concluded on the 7th. And of course, the Rwandan genocide between the Hutus and Tutsis began. Let's look at the 8th of April. The 8th of April, 1974, Hank Aaron breaks Babe Ruth's all-time home run record. Hmm. Let's see what else. Anything else? Oh, 1994 on that date, April 8th. Grunge icon Kurt Cobain is found dead 3 days after his suicide. Again, I was a teen, so I was old enough to remember Nirvana. Let's see, what else? Let's look at the 9th. Okay, on the 9th of April. 9th of April, 1865. Robert E. Lee surrenders at the Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia, ending the Civil War. Let's see what else. April 9th, 1881, Billy the Kid convicted of murder. He was sentenced to hang, but of course, that never happened because he ended up breaking out. So and that was April the 9th. So let's look now at April 10th and see what we have historically. April the 10th in 1919, revolutionary leader Emiliano Zapata assassinated in Mexico. Zapata was one of the um, major leaders during the Mexican Revolution. And he was really an everyman, um, one of the indigenous people in the southern part of Mexico. So yeah, he was really an everyman leader. A leader of the people, so. That was April 10th. Let's look at the 11th. I was trying to think of the other leader that sided with Zapata. I can't remember his name for some reason now. On the 11th, 1814, Napoleon abdicates the throne and is exiled to Elba. On the April the 11th in 1979, Ugandan dictator Idi Amin overthrown. In 1970, Apollo 13 launched to the moon, which at that point we'd already landed on the moon a couple times, mainly with Apollo 11. This was Apollo 13, which also was one of our trips to the moon. Let's see. April the 11th in 1803, French Foreign Minister Talleyrand offers to sell the Louisiana Purchase to the U.S. And of course, it pretty much doubled the size of the U.S. April the 11th, 1951, President Truman relieves General MacArthur of duties in Korea. And that was the 11th. And finally, let's look at the 12th, and that'll give us this most recent week. April the, oh, there it is. April the 12th. 1861, Civil War begins as Confederate forces fire on Fort Sumter. Let's see. What else happened on the 12th? April 12th, 1945, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt dies. And that, of course, is while he was in office. Because his vice president, Truman, actually set the order to drop the atomic bomb. So, and what ended World War II. And that was it. So, for this last week, those are the historical moments on this week in history. Let's take a look and well, we don't have to take a look, but I want to talk a bit about science because I also want to do a comment on science. But this week we know the big science news. We finally have photographic proof of black holes in space. We were finally able to gather proof, and it helped prove Einstein's general relativity theory. So now we have legitimate photo evidence of black holes, and Einstein's general relativity theory is actually further strengthened and proven, uh, from this photographic evidence. And that was kind of the big news in science this week. Now, let's talk a little bit about the news. The actual news of the week. My apologies. It appears the education secretary wants to cut education in the U.S., especially under public schools. So that's a major issue right now. As if we don't have enough stupidity in this world. We've also got the cries from the Republicans, oh, time to attack Democrats for trying to run the Mueller probe. But the funny thing is, Barr's report, it doesn't discuss the Mueller probe in full. It just, even the actual Barr report says, no, it does not exonerate the president. The only thing he really focused on, uh, that Barr focused on, it doesn't prove collusion. Which there was a lot of Americans who were like, yeah, we don't think collusion's an issue. So he went from hating, so Trump went from hating Mueller to loving him again, and then now realizing, oh, it doesn't fully exonerate Trump. He kind of hates him again. It's like, it shows only if you could do things for him, he's happy. Also, recently, Trump let go of his Department of Homeland Security Secretary, DHS, Kristen Nielsen, because she said, "No, we can't do all what you're wanting to do." And Trump is wanting to trample on the Constitution in a lot of what he is wanting to just do. There are certain rights that he doesn't have. The presidency is not a dictatorship. You have to work with the Congress and the courts. I mean, in school you learn about this little pyramid of power. Each side has certain things they keep control over, but it's always balanced out so that no one group has too much power. And Trump is hating this so much and attacks the Congress or the courts because he don't like the fact that it's constitutionally balanced out. He's going to have to get used to it. I don't think he will, given that he loves hanging out with dictators and thinking he's one, but whatever. Now, so all I can really remember for now, like I said, my mind's kind of blah. But with that said, I think that'll give us the video. But remember, as always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. so important. Don't be a sheep or part of the stupid masses. Be educated. It don't mean go against what is taught. It means understand it. Know it. Don't fall for such stupidity like climate change is a hoax or anti-vaxxer movements and the like. It's, I done made a video on that, so I'll not go into it. But yeah. But I'll see you all again in the next video. But until then, later.